Welcome to The Exchange. I'm Rob Cox of Reuters Breaking Views. My guest today is Nick Verbitsky, who's just produced and directed a film called Confidence Game, which is about all the shenanigans at Bear Stearns. Nick, welcome aboard. It's a very interesting film. I saw it last night. First question is, it's been 4 years since the whole Bear Stearns thing boiled over and basically threw us all into a giant financial crisis. What inspired you to kind of go ahead and do something about this now?
I have a master's in finance from NYU, and finance has always been an area of interest for me. But, at the time that Bear went down, that fateful week in March, the rumors were rife that there was a conspiracy among hedge fund managers to bring the firm down. So that, in addition to the fact that I had several friends who worked at Bear Stearns,
right,
and the impact that had on their lives kind of inspired me to at least start looking into it. And, as I kind of peeled back the layers of the onion, so to speak, it was clear that there was a lot more to this story than just the firm going down in 1 week. It had started long before then, and certainly Bear's reputation and a lot of other facets of the Bear story made it very compelling.
One of the things I asked that is because, in a sense, it was the tip of the iceberg. When we look at what happened, 6 months later with Lehman Brothers, AIG, the entire global financial system went into a tailspin, after which you sort of look and go, well, Bear Stearns, fifth largest investment bank on Wall Street, a bunch of bastards, as a few people call them in your film. Sort of why do we care about Bear Stearns?
Well, it's a great question. I think one thing I will say in terms of continuing on that path in producing the film was when Lehman went down, and then the AIG thing started popping up, it was clear to me that the Bear situation was going to be that focal point, that moment, the first domino, so to speak, to go down. And really, Bear had all of the ingredients of the subprime bubble and a lot of other things that led to this disaster, which I don't think it gets enough credit for. I think people focus on Lehman more because it was the biggest corporate bankruptcy in American history, which, is certainly a big story.
When you look at your film and you realize there were so many warning signs that if you were at Lehman Brothers, if you were running Lehman Brothers or you were a regulator or a politician, it should have been evident that this wasn't going to be an isolated case.
Absolutely. And in fact, the Bear situation actually kind of forced some things to happen at Lehman where, Dick Fuld, the guys at Lehman, I've had journalists tell me, they thought they knew for a fact that they were going to be saved. I mean, they said if the government's going to save a place like Bear, then, we're going to be fine.
Yeah, one of the points you made was that Bear, famously, Jimmy Kane, who ran it, basically gave a finger to the rest of Wall Street when they were asked to put money up to save long-term capital. And I remember hearing stories about that, and, they were sort of kicked out of the room and sort of get the hell out of here by all the good and the great of Wall Street. Lehman, of course, gave a smaller amount at that table. And in fact, there was someone was telling me a quote in the room said, well, then I think it was the CFO of Morgan Stanley had said to Dick Fuld, well, you get to sit at the kids' table while we're talking about what to do about long-term capital. Yeah. But you point out the complicity of everyone up and down the chain of finance. Right. That seems to be a kind of an innovation to your piece.
Thank you for that. I think the problem with how this genre is being looked at, especially in documentary film, is that it's black or white to whoever's making the film. And the way I look at this,
Inside Job is an example. There's guys with black hats. They work on Wall Street. They frequent bordellos, and they're just bad guys. And we all know it's not quite how it works.
It was certainly sensationalized, I felt, in that film, but really, what I tried to do with this film is take a more balanced approach, and whereas a film like Inside Job is interviewing people like Nouriel Roubini and Christine Lagarde when she was the finance minister of France, that's not necessarily teaching me much about the crisis. What I try to do here is give you a more street-level view. So, I'm showing you a couple who lied.
Let's take a clip. The couple is, we'll go to that. You have this guy who was basically working in the mortgage factory of Bear Stearns called EMC Mortgage. Right. I think we have a clip of this guy who basically has to repackage the West Virginia loans. Let's take a look at it.
Sometimes corners were cut. According to West Virginia code, you have to be licensed by the state in order to service loans secured by property in West Virginia. It was discovered that Bear Stearns had been buying West Virginia loans for several years now, and were not allowed to service it.
Without reporting the oversight to regulators, Bear enforced a mafia-style code of silence within its walls to quietly fix the problem.
It was a member of my analyst group who was in charge of finding all the collateral, finding out which securities it had been placed into, and then they quietly pulled it all out, substitute them with other loans of similar nature that were not located in West Virginia, and then they threatened everybody with their jobs if they opened their mouth about it.
He must have known in his gut that he was breaking the rules of some sort, but
well, yeah.
But so did everybody.
When
right?
you get threatened with your job, if you say anything about what you've just done, yeah, I think that's probably true. You know, I think it also speaks to the institutionalized nature of the malfeasance that was going on Wall Street. You know, where a great number of people in that situation were complicit in it. Nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. Nobody quit. You know, and I just think it's a teachable moment for people who are, you know, looking at the rights and wrongs in business. I mean, once you take that step, you know, it's a very slippery slope downward.
You interview a lot of journalists in the film. You've got Andrew Sorkin, you've got Bill Cohen, you've got Brian Burrows, and they all talk about the bastards that are Bear Stearns, and everyone knew these guys were kind of like on the very edges. Here's a question. Why didn't you ask them why they missed it? Why we miss it, I should say collectively as a journalist.
First of all, I don't know that anybody could have seen the disaster that took place. You know, I do think that there were rumblings about it. I mean, certainly people were pointing to things when Ralph Cioffi's funds went down. That was a big moment, and certainly after that happened, the SEC was holding, or the New York Fed was holding weekly conference calls with Bear Stearns, which inexplicably ended in November of that year. Why that happened, nobody really knows.
And then a year before they went bust.
4 months only, and the next month, in fact, they declared their first quarterly loss in their history, yet those calls never
And I suppose, to be fair, you also point out the Wall Street Journal takedown of Jimmy Cain, which was, you know, everyone on Wall Street read that. This is the one where he's like smoking dope in the bathroom and never playing golf and
bridge tournament when Cioffi's funds were imploding. It's you know, that was a big moment you know, at that moment people really understood that, you know, Jimmy Cain wasn't down and dirty with the business, and you know, nobody really had a bird's eye view of what was going on.
Well, let's returning to following on the conversation about the management of Bear Stearns. You seem to have gotten hold of a clip, an internal video, where Alan Schwartz, who by now is the CEO, Jimmy Cain has gone off wherever playing cards, and it must be the Friday after, the Friday before, basically all hell broke loose, but the Friday morning when they'd come out and said that they'd gotten basically a guarantee by the Fed through J.P. Morgan to ensure 28 days of liquidity.
Right.
Let's take a look at the clip.
We announced this morning we reached an agreement with J.P. Morgan Chase to provide us with a liquidity facility to allow us to continue our normal business operations. I know this has been a very, very difficult week for all of you. I'm sorry that you've had to go through it. I'm simply asking that we all stay focused and we can come out with a positive outcome. Thank you.
Well, he looks pretty tired, doesn't he?
Well, you know, that video was made after about 36 straight hours of him being up along with his executive team trying to find a way out. You know, what happened was, you know, basically what became evident was that the firm was basically mortgaging itself every night and then refinancing it the very next day with overnight repo.
But we've learned, haven't we?
Apparently not.
No?
Because
I mean, are we
Global,
still...
you know, MF Global was doing a lot of the same things.
That's true. But of course, MF Global didn't cause a systemic meltdown, which is, I suppose, a good thing. We've got our own failures. Capitalism has them, but at least they're contained. Well, thanks a lot for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Rob Cox of Reuters Breaking Views. My guest today was Nick Verbitsky, whose film Confidence Game about the fall of Bear Stearns is coming to a theater near you soon. And we'll be back next week with The Exchange.